Do you have a dream that is a small seed of an idea and it's ready to sprout?
Or are you in the workplace weeds and you need to bloom in a new creative way?
Perhaps you're ready to embrace and grow a more vibrant, joyful, and authentic life. If you answered yes to any of these, you are ready to rebloom. Welcome to the podcast where we have enlightening chats with nature lovers, makers, and artisans as they share inspiring stories about pivoting to a heart-centered passion.
Hello, I'm Lori Siebert, and I am very curious to hear from friends and artisans about the creativity that blooms when you follow your heart.
And I'm Jamie Jameson, and I want to dig deep into the why behind each courageous leap of faith and walk through new heart-centered gardens.
Each episode of Rebloom will be an in-depth conversation with guests who, through self-discovery, shifted to share their passions with the world.
Get ready to find your creative joy as we plant the seeds for you to rebloom. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Rebloom. We are super excited today to have a guest that hails from my neck of the woods, from Pittsburgh. And Lori, do you want to do the introductions? Hi.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
So I heard about Tyler through my friend Courtney Miner, who we've also had on the podcast. And I was at a residency with her, and I was sharing the theme of our podcast, which is people who have pivoted in their lives. And she right away said, "Oh, you need to talk to my friend Tyler," who she said he was a neuroscientist and now he's brewing ginger beer. I'm like, that's a big pivot. So welcome, Tyler.
Glad to be here, guys. Thank you. And great introduction. I pivoted, I have in my career, and happy to share my story.
Well, awesome. Okay, so wait, let's start with maybe college. You decide to be a neuroscientist, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I went to Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio, not too far from here in Pittsburgh, and wanted to study neuroscience with the intention of becoming a doctor. About 3 years into my college career, pivot time already, I was shadowing some doctors that I knew from my hometown in Monroe, Michigan, and they gave me some advice telling me that, I really would not enjoy the medical profession. And, I truly didn't enjoy it when I was shadowing these doctors either. I think when I was, pursuing the medical field, I had a different idea of what it would be, where, I've always been a little bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit. So, it just didn't really fit what I was looking for. I've always been kind of a little bit more of a free thinker, free spirit, going to Oberlin College, you could assume how freely I would think. So, pivoted then to just focus on neuroscience and research itself.
So if you've always been an entrepreneur and a free thinker, why did you decide going to that path in the first place? Like, what made you think that was where you wanted to be?
Like most young Midwestern smart kids, I was always told, straight A's and, valedictorian of my high school, I would be a doctor, and I think it was, ingrained into my mind from a very young age that, I'm a smart guy, so I should go into the medical world. So I think I was trying to convince myself that that was what I wanted to do, and also trying to make my family proud as well in doing so, where truly deep down, that's not actually what I truly wanted to do.
Wow.
It's interesting. But you took something that you enjoyed, and clearly you graduated with that degree. So you must have enjoyed the parts of the neuroscience anyway throughout your college career.
I did, yeah. I really found the field of neuroscience fascinating because, it focused on how people think. And I think it was very meta in how I was experiencing my life. I was thinking about the way I was thinking, and I was learning about how people thought as well. So I was very fascinating in learning how the brain works and learning how, we learn about information, how we process information, how we apply that information, and how we communicate to people. And, really started digging into finding the passion in how that drives who I am and how I communicate with people as well. I truly love just unpacking, people at their core. So, that's what really drove me through to my neuroscience degree.
So you went from the neuroscience to, I know you were working for a neuroscience marketing firm, which I had to ask what that was about, but I think you might have just explained it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It was a very fascinating place to work. So technically it was working in the field of neuromarketing, working for a company called Neuroscience. And the company had a modified form of EEG called steady state topography that measures the surface of the brain to understand what parts of the brain are active as people are interacting with advertisements or different types of media. So based off of the different parts of the brain that are lighting up with certain people, you can tell whether or not people are remembering certain types of information. You can tell what is emotionally stimulating, what certain types of information are engaging, or what certain types of people like or dislike certain types of things.
Okay, so I imagine you are doing testing where you have people in a room and you're showing them things and you have them all hooked up to something.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Really?
So traditionally,
Wow.
most market research would be completed by bringing people into a room and having them answer questions. And truly, in that setting, you don't get the answers that you're looking for because, when you're asking people questions, they may feel like they're on the spot and won't give you the answers that they truly feel. A lot of times people don't actually know how they feel about things. The brain is so highly advanced. We just act on things or process information without actually stopping to think about why we do it. So we would conduct these research studies by hooking people up to caps that would measure the activity in their brain and see, what parts of the brain were lighting up at certain times. And then we can make conclusions or draw conclusions based off of, larger sample sizes of people and seeing different trends in different parts of the brain lighting up at certain times with certain groups of people.
That's fascinating.
And
That is fascinating.
I know. Wow.
I remember reading something about marketing years ago. My background's in marketing as well, and about the stop and stare tables that they put in stores because people walk into a store and they are a little afraid when they first walk into a store. So they stop and stare. And that's why in most major retailers, they would put a table right in the entranceway. And then I also remember them saying, well, 90% of the people go right. And so it's understanding how people behave and act. That's fascinating, though. That is fascinating.
I also wonder if that's correlated to, and not to go too far off topic, I wonder if that's also correlated to, the amount of people who are right-handed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Exactly. But just to understand how people behave and respond certainly is more factual to me than, okay, well, did you like this? Or, you get to know the why. Right. And the why is, no, they really responded to the color red versus blue because they may not even be able to articulate that, but that you can see it lighting up based on, well, I know I respond. I'm thinking of my own self and why I buy so many things on Instagram because I'm your target market.
It's so
your brain lights up.
My brain lights up. I'm like, I must have that wrinkle cream. I must have.
Well, the classic example would be the Pepsi Coke challenge. When the foundations of neuromarketing usually start with this. Looking back into the old Pepsi Coke challenge of the late 70s, most people, I think it was 75% of people chose Pepsi over Coke in a blind taste test. But when they were informed which was which in a retrial of this test in the early 90s, people chose Coke over Pepsi, knowing which was which, at a 75 to 25% level because of the brand affiliation that they have with Coke.
Wow.
That's
So,
interesting.
and they further pursued the whys with this in measuring brain response to the people who changed responses from Pepsi to Coke,
Wow.
by looking at like how strongly parts of the brain responded to or lit up when people were shown imagery affiliated with Coca-Cola. And
Huh.
a lot of the imagery would be lighting up parts of the brain that are linked to like, deep childhood memories.
Wow. Wow.
Also, closely linked to like, parts of the brain that are linked to religious beliefs or,
Yeah.
Wow.
other deeply rooted affiliations.
Oh my gosh. So how long did you work for the marketing firm, and then what was next in
Yeah.
the pivot life of
Sure,
Tyler?
sure. So I worked with the neuromarketing firm for about 9 years. There was an obvious time where, it was pretty tough in that industry when, we were in the pandemic.
Ah,
Obviously, that type of research required in-person interaction. So, business was really tough at that time.
Yeah.
yeah.
At that time, I'd been working on my current project for about 5 years, but that was always kind of a side project. Still hadn't gotten any funding for it. So I did a quick pivot and opened an art gallery in New York City, um,
Wow.
and ran some comedy shows with some friends in New York City as well. I was really trying to live the New York life and really trying to grasp the beauty of New York and the kind of the hustle and bustle of it at that time before
That's
moving to
fun.
Pittsburgh to open the brewery. Yeah,
But opening a gallery during pandemic time, is that
sure.
when you did? That's
Yeah,
probably
so
tricky as
so
well.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
at a time when things were opening up. So it was
Okay.
it was
Okay.
when people were so we were building out the gallery as things were starting to slowly open up at a limited scale.
Okay.
Okay.
So was lucky enough to find a space that a friend of mine had a really great deal on, and I couldn't pass it up. And went into business with a partner who had been wanting to open up a gallery for a while, and explored the art world. Had no gallery experience prior. My friend, who I went into business with, he was an avid art curator, and had wanted to open a gallery for a very long time. And I learned a lot from him. I brought a lot of my marketing expertise to that space, and also brought a lot of my expertise in just understanding how to communicate to people, how to bring people together in that space. Really, really kind of helped as well. And I learned a lot. I mean, honestly, I think the year that I owned that art gallery and was immersed in that world taught me a lot about myself and taught me a lot about, how to appreciate beautiful things.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and Urban Stems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention Rebloom. And a huge thanks to Urban Stems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Rebloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today. So a year's not a long time. What made you kind of pivot now again?
So we had finally, at the end of that year, secured enough funding to open up our brewery, to at least acquire our space.
So that was on the back burner the whole time. The
That was
brewery
always on the back burner.
Gotcha.
Brewery was always on the back burner.
So you were making recipes and doing fermentations and things all along.
I can't take any credit for the fermentations or recipes, but my business partner was.
Okay.
So my business partner, Jack, and I went to college at Oberlin College. He was a religion major. And we did neuroscience. We get into the brewing world.
Makes perfect sense.
He and I had this plan for a very long time, and he was bouncing around, working at different breweries throughout the U.S., kind of learning to brew while I was living in New York. Go ahead. Yeah.
Was he brewing beer, or was he? Because we should also let our listeners know, Jackworth is a ginger beer company. So was he brewing beer, or was he brewing something else?
He was working with breweries. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was working alongside brewers. He was never brewing beer himself. But he was getting experience within the brewing space. So after that year of running the gallery, we had raised enough money to get our building that we have here in Pittsburgh to start the build out of our ginger beer brewery. So at that time, I packed up my bags and moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, knowing only Jack. And with this dream of opening Pennsylvania's first ginger beer brewery.
Wow.
And it was a long build out. It was about a 2-year build out.
Wow.
Learning along the way, dealing with city politics.
Yeah, sure.
Trying to,
It's a good thing you were a neuroscience major. You probably knew how to handle them.
Patience came through in that regard. But, we had moving here was a big opportunity for us to, really drive home what we had always really wanted to do. The brewery was always a dream of ours. And it finally opened up in May of this year. And we've hit the ground running.
How has it been received?
It's been incredible. We are one of only a handful of breweries in the United States that are brewing alcoholic ginger beer. So we create a 5% ABV ginger beer that is gluten-free, vegan, and it is made with 4 ingredients. So it's very simple, very easy, very refreshing. Made with organic ginger from Peru, lime, water, and pure cane sugar.
Wow.
In addition to that, one of the things that we kind of discovered earlier this year was, it's a little bit more difficult to create alcoholic ginger beer than it is non-alcoholic ginger beer. So, we were going for the alcoholic ginger beer as our main flagship product, as the thing that, we're going to focus on. But there's a big sober curious market right now.
Yes.
And, we realized that, we should start making non-alcoholic ginger beer as well, because you don't have to ferment it as long. There's a big market for it, and it's easier to get it into stores. So we also create some non-alcoholic ginger beer out of our brewery as well.
So do you go to Peru ever?
Not yet, no. We are planning on taking a field trip. Our ginger that we do bring in is by far some of the best ginger in the region. You snuff it, and you can smell how pure and fresh.
Oh, I love ginger.
I love ginger too.
One of my favorites. Well, it's delicious.
So you started in May of this year.
Yes.
Is it a bar? And do you have food is it everything?
Yes.
Restaurant, bar, or is it just bar? Or?
So we focus on the things that we're good at, which is
Good.
brewing the beer, brewing the ginger beer. But we do have a tasting room. So as a Pennsylvania brewer with a brewer's license, we can have a full bar in our brewery, which allows us to have a full bar that serves Pennsylvania-based libations, beers, wines, and spirits. So for a fraction of the cost of a liquor license, we can run and operate a full bar. When it comes to food, we let the experts do it, and we work with local chefs and food trucks that come in and cook for us and cook for our guests.
That's great.
we treat our space as, it's in a neighborhood that is new, up and coming, as a lot of people say about a lot of new neighborhoods in their cities. But it's a developing neighborhood, with a lot of potential, and we don't lose sight of the fact of where we are. So we treat it as a community center. Reaching out to a lot of the local businesses, local startups that are doing the same thing that we're doing. Trying to partner with as many creators as possible to build like a tight-knit community of entrepreneurs in Pittsburgh that can work together out of our space, because a lot of the people that we work with don't have a space. A lot of the chefs that we bring in don't have a kitchen. They work out of a shared kitchen. So we bring them in to share their food from our space.
That's great.
That's amazing. All right. So let's go back to your neuroscience background. What lights you up in this new project? What's lighting up your brain in all of this?
I enjoy every day not being the same.
Yeah.
And every hour having a new set of challenges. I think that caters to my ADHD quite a bit. If I don't want to complete one task right now, I can move on to the next one. And then if I don't want to complete that next task, I can just move on to the next one. And then I'll just tie them all up at the end of the day.
I could so relate to this.
I can do that. Yeah. Welcome to the ADHD club.
I love it.
Well, I've been noticing, because I did a little dive into your branding, and I think it's lovely. I love the branding, and I love some of the things you're doing on your Instagram feed. It looks like you're having some fun with that.
Oh yeah.
So I'm assuming, coming from a marketing background, that part of it's fun.
Yeah, everything that we do is, and I love that you bring that up. From branding to our Instagram to the space itself, we want it to feel welcoming, personal. Something that is not, we don't want to feel stuffy. And we want to have fun with it. You see so many products, Instagram feeds just filled with pictures of their products, filled with pictures of people fake laughing, holding their stuff. And, it doesn't feel genuine. Whereas everything that we do, it's fun, it's funny. It's with our friends. We want it to be true to who we are, and we want to communicate who we are as a brand. A picture of our ginger beer, a picture of our branding is not going to move the needle. And that's something that I learned in my days of neuromarketing. What sells is a lifestyle. What sells is, who you are. People want to be a part of a group. They want to be a part of a movement. They don't want to, buy something, that is just a pretty picture on Instagram.
They want to be connected. They want to be connected to the soul of a brand. And you and your partner are the souls of a brand. And that is what people, in my opinion, my marketing background, I mean, you can put up all the pretty pictures you want, but if they don't know the person or the story behind it, then they won't connect with it. And I'm sure that is part of what has driven people through your doors and getting to know you both.
And that's the thing I've always truly wanted. And everything that I've done is just the opportunity to share a piece of myself with people. And, that's another thing outside of just being able to, cure my ADHD on a daily basis. I really enjoy being able to, put everything that I am and who I am into this business to, leave a piece of myself, for the next generation, but also share it with a little bit of, with everybody who sees it.
I feel like that feeling or that wish is a very entrepreneurial mindset. So take us back to Tyler as a little boy, and were you a little entrepreneur as a kid?
I was. Oh my goodness. It's very funny. I grew up on Lake Erie in Monroe, Michigan, and my first job was at a hot dog stand just dressing hot dogs with, ketchup and mustard. And they had this really great chili. It was phenomenal. It was Monroe's original hot dog. And I'd quit that job because I was also an athlete and wanted to focus on, getting ready for my first year of varsity football. And I had also recently gotten my license at the time. And, me being a car enthusiast, growing up in a car family, I got a speeding ticket that, right after I'd quit my job. And I owed a lot of money. Because
you were a 16-year-old boy.
I had to think on my feet. So, as a 16-year-old boy, got a pretty bad speeding ticket. So, had to think on my feet. And, growing up near the water, I saw a need and for people's beaches to be groomed, to be taken care of, beach landscaping. Nobody was doing it. Everybody would go out and, grumble about having to pick up like zebra mussels or, washed up logs. Of course, it's Lake Erie. You never know what's going to be washing up on your beach that day.
Yeah.
So I started a beach landscaping business when I was 16 years old, and hired my friends and, charged a pretty penny for me to, go clean up logs and debris every Saturday and, Sunday morning when people wanted to use their beaches.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's
and
awesome.
it was a great business too, because, stuff keeps washing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always a need.
The job's not going to wash up.
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you've pivoted. Tell us about your partnership with Jack, which I happen to like that name because I have a grandson named Jack who's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So Jack and I went to college together, as I had mentioned, and we were really good friends in college. And after college, we kind of went our separate ways, and we came to this idea of Jackworth Ginger Beer. Jack being short for Jackworth, that's his first name. Came to this idea of Jackworth Ginger Beer when he was living in Stamford, Connecticut, while I was living in New York. While he was living in Stamford, he was working at a brewery called Half Full Brewing. He was running events for them. And I would escape the hustle and bustle of New York to go visit him in Stamford about once a month. And, we'd hang out, catch up. Him being a dear friend of mine, it was always great to see him. And him and I always had great rapport. And at that time, he was doing ginger beer as a home brew. And we were just sitting around sipping it one day, and, we were just looking at the beer market. And I also, at the time, happened to be consulting with Anheuser-Busch while I was at Neuroscience. And I was kind of getting a little bit of an insider scoop of, what was being acquired, what was some of the trends in the alcobev space.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at each other and we're like, there's something here. And this was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
There's still not many alcoholic ginger beer companies out there. Since then, we've seen alcoholic seltzer proliferate. We've seen cider grow and plateau, and now is on the decline. But 9 years ago, we said, we're onto something, and we got to create a company out of this. And, we filed the LLC at that time. And we both still had jobs to do, we still had to support ourselves. So it wasn't always a full-fledged, it wasn't a full-fledged job for us until, the pandemic, really, until we were forced to, hustle, and, it was put up or shut up time for us. We built our business plans and kicked around the idea of starting the company in different cities outside of Pittsburgh, like maybe Detroit, maybe outside of New York. But it was always just kind of something that was on the back burner until, we experienced the taste of having to, cut our teeth a little bit.
What is a cool thing.
Yeah, it is cool. Is Jack from Pittsburgh? Is that what brought you guys to Pittsburgh?
Yeah. So Jack's from Pittsburgh. He's named after his great-great-grandfather, Howard Jackworth, who was an old streetcar driver. And he grew up in Point Breeze, Pittsburgh, and his dad owned a pretty well-known bar and restaurant here called Dunning's, and Jack started bartending at the age of 17,
Oh my
which
God.
is illegal. Don't tell anybody. But
We won't tell anybody. We
but
won't tell
started
anyone.
bartending at the age of 17, and had always wanted to run a bar. He has a lot of he kind of grew up in this space and saw the value that it brought to people. I think outside of anything else, the service industry, and whether it's a bar or restaurant, whatever, you bring a certain type of short-term joy to people.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's something that he always wanted to bring to people, and now we get to do that through spreading the joy through ginger beer.
And how
I
fun to work with
love
one of
it.
your best friends.
Yeah.
That's
We're
pretty
very, very
amazing.
lucky.
I
Ben
lo-
and Jerry are also from Oberlin, so we like to call ourselves
Oh,
the
wow.
next
The
Ben and Jerry.
the Tyler and Jack. Well,
Exactly.
and there's a couple things that you mentioned, and we've heard this from some of our guests, and I think it's important to share and to sort of reiterate for our listeners too. You kept your day job.
Yeah.
I talked with one of my students this past week, and she wants to make a pivot, and I said, please don't quit your day job. That's paying your bills. But explore this other thing that she wants to do. And I said, do it in the evening, do it on the weekends, really see if there's a market there.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. But the other piece, and I think this is really important too, is that Jack had experience in the restaurant world or the bar world, which is very difficult. It's a very difficult business. And just to say, I want to open a restaurant, oh my goodness. And so it's good that he had that experience, and that, and then you in turn have that experience now. Well, you had a whole different set of experiences, but I guess the hot dog business probably.
Well, I think like complementary, probably. You have complementary skills that when put together make a really strong team.
Yeah. We balance each other out very, very well. He's very creative in his own right when it comes to coming up with ginger beer, obviously, and brewing different types of ginger beer, and from running a bar and coming up with drinks, and I'm creative from a different perspective when it comes to marketing and how to communicate with people, and in taking risks in communicating with people as well.
So I'm imagining maybe next steps will be more distribution.
Absolutely. So right now we are in 19 spots outside of our own. The goal right now is to ramp up distribution in the local area. Long-term goals are to start producing outside of our own brewery and co-packing and distributing outside of Pittsburgh. Long-term goal is to build our ginger beer into the ginger beer of note, given that there's not much competition out there. We see ourselves being somebody that could be considered as being acquired by one of the big brewing companies.
Big boys, yeah.
We've seen it happen with companies like Ranch Water, Spike Seltzer back in the day. We think that ginger beer is on the horizon. People love it here. So in our smallish sample size that we have, going back to the market research world, we've seen positive reviews. So we certainly think that it is the next big thing in the low ABV alcobev world. So we would like to increase distribution as soon as possible, and we're putting everything into place to do so. And hopefully you'll be hearing about us outside of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania here pretty soon.
That's exciting. So you mentioned when you went down the neuroscience path, part of it was wanting to make your family proud. Yeah. How do they feel about what you're doing now?
They're very happy. Turns out if I'm happy, they're happy.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
true.
I think part of it was, my dad would always joke. He's like, you got to make sure that we're putting your expensive education, your expensive neuroscience degree to use. And I feel like I'm doing so.
Yeah, I think you are in a lot of ways. I think it's so cool that, like you're not only building a business, but you're building it with a friend. And then I think the benefits to the community around you and the collaborations you're doing with chefs and, building up that little part of where you landed. I think all of that's really cool too. Did you always like community building?
Absolutely. I think from a marketing perspective, I am a big believer in, building things together with other companies. I love collaborations. I think, together, you can communicate to so many more people. I think, even from an events perspective, from things that we do at the brewery, like, I mentioned chefs and I mentioned other brands that we've worked with, but like, we look to do collaborations with artists and with, vintage vendors and like just any business under the sun, like anybody who wants to do something together. We're all for it because it just expands our network and expands our community and strengthens our community that much more.
That's cool. You could have a little gallery in your space.
I'd say
yes,
it is definitely something that has been discussed.
Yeah,
I think you see it too. It's funny if you just look at if you go into the convenience store and look at what's going on. We'll say beef jerky, for example. I saw recently that the Jack Links is doing collaborations with Doritos and Fritos, and
yes,
and all these big brands are picking up on it too. It's I think the amount that audiences have been segmented and kind of severed means that you got to bring people back together by collaborating with different brands. And different
have you partnered or collaborated with any distilleries like bourbon or the companies that make the Moscow mules, the Kentucky mules?
I love that you bring that up. I do. Well, it depends. When is this going to be airing?
A few weeks.
Perfect.
We can cut it out too if it's
so we're collaborating with one of our favorite local distilleries, Maggie's Farm Rum.
Oh, that's great.
And this is our first. It was a dream come true for us. We're just over the moon about this because it's a brand that we respect wholeheartedly. They're consistently ranked and awarded as one of Pittsburgh or one of America's best rums, and they reached out to us to do a collaboration.
Oh my God, that's amazing!
We're doing a holiday collaboration with them, which includes their spiced and dark rum with our ginger beer. We're calling it the Fireside Mule.
Oh yeah,
I love it.
And we're going to be releasing it on October 21st of this year. So that's our first big collab, but down the line, because we're seeing such a big uptick in the RTD market, and there have been some.
What's RTD? What's RTD?
Ready to drink. Sorry.
Okay.
RTD, like canned cocktails.
I gotcha.
In layman's terms, because we've seen such a big uptick in the RTDs, and some recent legislation changes in Pennsylvania now allowing these canned cocktails to be sold outside of liquor stores, in beer stores, and in gas stations. Everybody's kind of chomping at the bit to do some sort of canned cocktail. So down the line, we do have some more plans to collaborate with other distilleries because our ginger beer goes well with so many different types of liquors.
Will this first collaboration be ready to drink, or okay?
Yeah, it's a ready to drink canned cocktail. That will be available in the Pittsburgh area in about a month.
Oh, that's exciting.
That is so cool. Tyler, can people buy not the non-alcoholic ginger beer from your website, or do we have to come to Pittsburgh?
We have to come to Pittsburgh at the moment.
Okay.
Now, we could work something out, but shipping is very expensive for our canned products right now. Not to say that is not that's pretty soon. That's within a few months. We're going to be planning to roll out some of our non-alcoholic products to other states.
So the branding for the ready to drink, is it branded with, like, who did the branding for that can?
Yeah, so we're working with the person who does all of our artwork. His name is Miller McCormick,
Uh-huh.
and it's going to be branded as a Jackworth Ginger Beer Maggie's Farm rum collaboration.
Okay.
So it's going to be both of our names at the top with the same amount, or at the same hierarchy, presenting this fireside mule. It's almost a brand duet is what we like to call it.
I love
That's so
that.
cool. So is it the non-alcoholic ginger beer that goes into that?
Yes, it is. It's an
Okay.
non-alcoholic ginger beer
Yeah.
that goes into it with their rum.
With the rum.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'd be really buzzed.
Exactly. Then if you put the alcoholic ginger beer into a meal, we call it a super meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably can't have too many of those.
Exactly.
Well,
Oh,
of
good.
this latest pivot, what has surprised you or what has excited you?
I have been the most surprised by how receptive people are. Honestly,
Yeah.
I thought. I mean, I thought it'd be a lot harder, and granted, it is very, very difficult.
Yes.
But I people really seem to love what we're doing, and I think that's part of the hump that you have to get over. Is like, it's tough to take a risk. It's tough to really put all of your effort into what you're doing because you are scared. It's easy to be scared to fail. It's really hard to put yourself out there. But once we've done it, it feels really good to see how much people like it. That's surprising to me. And I'm sure I had confidence going into it, but so newly into it, it's seeing people come together at the bar all the time, or seeing how people frequently come back to the brewery to pick up 4-packs it's incredible.
I don't think it's surprising because I think, everything you learned as a neuroscientist
Sure.
or neuromarketer, you have such a beautiful story, it's genuine, it's authentic. There's a lot of passion behind it. Those are all the things that people respond to, and they want to support that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I mean, at the same point, I'm kind of humble. I rarely take time to sit back and reflect because I'm always looking toward the next thing, and
That's
it's always times
ADHD.
like
That is the
I know
ADHD.
it's always times like these that kind of force me to. It's podcast therapy or therapy on the podcast.
Exactly.
But it's all,
Well, we'll tell you how great you are.
you are doing great. And it's also the foundations. I love the strong foundation you had both as friends, but also the foundation that Jack had as an expert brewer. I mean, it sounds like from your recipe that you're sharing with us, it's really the quality, and you're really putting forth. I mean, I think if you put the quality, the friendship, the story, the branding, all of that combined, that is a recipe for success. That is, and kudos to you guys. That's amazing.
Thank you. I truly can't wait for you guys to try it either. It's
well, I was,
I will be there sooner than Lori. I will. I definitely will be over visiting. Tyler, is there anything you would like to leave our listeners with? We always ask for a little bit of advice, maybe something you've learned. Now, you are the neuroscience major, so you probably got some good advice.
Sure.
Something that you would like to help our potential rebloomers in their journey.
Absolutely. I mean, there were a couple of points that were brought up during this interview that I would like to revisit. I think, one is if you have an idea and if you're pursuing something, take the time to actually, put your additional time, your extra time into focusing on it, right? You have to sacrifice to get to where I am, to open your own business. I think that was the biggest thing that I've had to do. I sacrificed so much time in my 20s in New York City, but here I am, and very happy because of it. And I think another thing too is don't be afraid to put your full force into what you're doing. I think that was the last point that we were talking about too. Is just like, I put my true self into everything that we do, and it really shows in what we do and how we communicate ourselves to the masses or whoever's watching. So
Amazing. Amazing.
Excellent. I'm so glad
Oh.
Courtney introduced us. I'll have to send her a text and
Of
tell her
course.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And thank you so much for joining us today. Your story is incredible. I hope everybody can make their way or find their way to Pittsburgh. And if not, I hope that your brand is out in everyone's hands very soon. And I have a feeling
Thank you.
it will be. It will
I
be.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
Thank you.
Tyler. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Lori, another amazing interview. I am in awe of our guests, each and every one of them, and Tyler is no exception. What an unbelievable journey he's been on
Yeah.
already.
And I always love seeing, and this has been kind of a common thing where even when people make a pivot, there still remains this thread where
Yeah,
I envision them like just picking up different skills at different places. And maybe that's not where they're ultimately going to end up, but they take those skills that they've learned at each place and applied it to where they go next and where they go next. So I think his background in neuroscience and neuromarketing, and then the gallery and
yeah.
what he's doing now, like all of that expertise he can take forward and apply it to this new venture.
And one builds on the other. And I love that. And I tend to see this having taught for many years. And he's in his, I'm guessing, early 30s. But I love that the late 20s or the 20s and the 30-year-olds now are not taking a traditional path. They're saying, wait, no, I want to do something a little different. And I loved that he pivoted starting in college and said, no, I don't want to go into medicine. I want to follow my heart. And he has, and he, at a very young age, is going to find a lot more fulfillment doing what he loves for the rest of his career, which is
Yeah.
fabulous.
And we've touched on this before in other interviews where as horrible as COVID was in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
it seemed to be an impetus or a push for a lot of people to make a switch in their lives too, towards
Yeah.
something that maybe is more fulfilling and more joyful.
I would agree. Well, cheers to Tyler. Cheers to our guests. Thank you all for joining us, and peace, love, and rebloom. Life is too short not to follow your passions. So go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of Rebloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.